arguments for the existence of God in patristic and Byzantine theological literature. The need to defend the Christian faith in one God, creator and conservator of the world, in the presence of atheism, skepticism, and various heresies, led to the emergence of such arguments in the Church Fathers. They were developed from some key biblical passages hinting at natural ways to the knowledge of God, as well as the already available philosophical sources. In fact, such arguments appeared already in ancient Greek and Roman philosophy. Initially, they were in answer to the challenges of atheism and skepticism spread throughout the pagan world from the age of the first sophists in the second half of the 5th century BC. Thus, Protagoras doubted the existence of gods. Aristodemus the Younger did not want to sacrifice to gods. And Diagoras of Melos and Theodorus of Cyrene did not recognize any god. Charges of atheism were also brought against Anaxagoras and Socrates, although according to Xenophon, Socrates was the first to develop arguments for the existence of God. Plato in his Laws, among other crimes, enumerates those of impiety and blasphemy caused by disbelief in the existence of gods. To combat these opinions, Plato developed various teleological arguments for the existence of God in his Laws and Philebus. In addition, his doctrine of eternal ideas eventually gave way to a new type of argument, that for an ideal cause, as we will note in a moment. At the same time, we find different arguments for the existence of a prime mover in Aristotle's Physics and Metaphysics, which were not so much a reaction against atheism as an inner need of his metaphysical system. In the 3rd to 2nd centuries BC, the tendencies to skepticism and atheism became even stronger, which caused a reaction among various philosophical schools, particularly among the Stoics, such as Zeno, Chrysippus, and Cicero. A further contribution to the development of arguments for the existence of God was made by Neoplatonists, such as Plotinus, who gathered together the best achievements of all the philosophical schools and made a strong impact on the development of patristic theology. The origins and development of arguments for the existence of God in patristic literature combined in itself two great traditions, the philosophical and the biblical. On the one hand, as I have mentioned, the basic types of argument were developed in Greek and Roman philosophy. On the other hand, in the Bible, we also find some hints of natural ways to the knowledge of God. Thus, the existence of God the Creator is evident from the very beauty and majesty of his creatures, as in Psalm 18 and Wisdom 13. There are also some references to atheism in the Psalms, in the verses about the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Other important texts include Romans 1:20, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, and Hebrews 3:4, for every house is builded by some man, but he who built all things is God. The proofs proposed by the Church Fathers were aimed partly at refuting the thesis of the Epicureans and some other philosophers who denied divine providence, and partly at defending the faith in one God creator in the face of paganism and atheism. Thus, St. John of Damascus explained the origin of atheism by the direct impact of the devil on human beings on the Orthodox faith, chapter 3. According to him, the apostle performed miracles in order to drag humans out of the abyss of unbelief by a net of miracles and to turn them to the light of the knowledge of God. But the father of the church began to do this not only by miracles, but also by the word of grace, that is, by rational arguments, according to John. In general, early Christian theologians, especially the Latins, in their arguments for the existence of God, mostly relied on the Stoics and Cicero. And he cites here many of the Latin fathers, Minucius Felix, Tertullian, Cyprian, and others. Later Greek and Latin fathers, such as Athanasius, Basil, Gregory of Nazianzus, Gregory of Nyssa, and Augustine, and John Damascene, relied on the teaching both of their Christian predecessors and the Greek philosophers. Most of their arguments are a posteriori, such as arguments from the need for an efficient cause of the existence and preservation of the world, and arguments of design. Besides these, there are also a priori arguments, which I will deal with first. So if you have a handout, you can follow through these various arguments. There should be handouts available. I'll start with the a priori arguments. Many church fathers acknowledge that all people naturally possess some kind of innate or immediate knowledge of the existence of God. St. Jerome, commenting on a sentence from the Gospel of John, John 1:9, there was the true light which enlightens every man that comes into the world, writes, quote, from this it is clear that the notion of God is innate to all humans by nature, so that without Christ nobody can either be born or possess in himself seeds of wisdom, justice, and the other virtues. According to St. John of Damascus, quote, God did not leave us in absolute ignorance of himself, for the knowledge of God's existence has been implanted in us all by nature. Thus we can see in these statements an argument from the innate idea of one God implanted in all human minds. Tertullian calls this type of argument a testimony of the soul. He mentions that every human soul possesses a feeling or notion of one new God. For it sometimes exclaims such words as, God is great, or God is good, or if God wills, and so on. According to Tertullian, these simple words already indicate that there is one whose power, will, and justice are silently recognized by every human soul. Prosper of Aquitaine connects this innate knowledge of God with the universal divine grace that God bestowed on all nations, without exception, so that they could find and venerate him. Now, next are the a posteriori arguments, widespread in Greek and Latin patristic literature. Such rational arguments are called by Tertullian naturalia instrumenta, or natural means, for the knowledge of God. The basic assumption here is that from the existence or various aspects of the universe, we can make an inference to the existence of its almighty and intelligent creator. There are several types of such argument. Number one, the argument from the necessity of the existence of an efficient cause. This argument is based on the notion of change or alteration and runs as follows. All things in the world are either created or uncreated. If they are created, they are changeable, since everything that has a beginning must undergo various forms of change. However, if they are uncreated, they must be unchangeable as well. Now, the things we observe are changeable, so therefore they are created. And if things are created, they must have a creator, who in his turn must be uncreated, otherwise the argument would go on to infinity. As uncreated, the creator must also be unchangeable, and it is what we call God. And many different fathers give a form of that, including John Damascene, Augustine, very recent. Number two, the argument from the necessity of a prime movement. This argument was borrowed from Aristotle. It is based on the existence of movement and runs as follows. Everything that's moving is moved by something else. This thing in turn is also moving and is moved by something else, and so on until we come to something that is unmovable, which is the prime movement, that is itself unmovable. This, of course, is God who moves all things without being moved. Forms of that argument in Nemesius, Maximus Confessor, and John Damascene. Number three, the argument from the necessity of a preservative cause. This argument is closely related to the argument of design, which will be next. It runs as follows. Even if we assume that the world has no efficient cause, and that it came into existence and was arranged by a complex structure spontaneously, it could not survive in such a state and preserve its natural order forever. For its order must turn into chaos if there is no external power that preserves it in harmony with its natural laws. We call that power God. Again, a number of fathers, Gregory Nazianzen, Minucius Felix, John Damascene, give this argument. Number four, the argument from design. This type of argument was extremely popular in patristic literature and spread out in various forms. Its core is the presence of an evident order and intelligent design in the structure of the universe, which leads to the conclusion that it has an intelligent creator. Analogies were also often employed, such as that of a house, skillfully constructed by an architect, or that of an invisible soul present in a body and governing its different members. The various types of this argument depend on what part of the world is under consideration. In one type, the world as a whole is viewed as a combination or unity of many different and opposite elements, such as fire, air, earth, and water, or of different and opposite qualities, such as heavy and light and dry and humid. These elements and qualities cannot be combined together to produce one indivisible and harmonious world if there were not an omnipotent power which combined them together and preserves them in harmony with each other. And you can find this argument in Athanasius, John of Damascus, Minucius Felix, Novatian, etc. Another type of argument observes that animals and other living creatures, even insignificant ones, possess in themselves a complicated structure of various members and parts, each having its own function and purpose, and such a structure presupposes the existence of an intelligent creator. And again, this would be in Ignatius Felix, St. Basil, and others. In a third type, human beings as microcosms bear witness to their Creator. Not only their rational and immaterial soul, which was created in the image and likeness of God, but also the material body, its upright posture, and its complicated structure, convince us that they, too, have a Creator. And again, many fathers make this argument. Thus, there is nothing disordered or useless or accidental in the world, according to St. Basil. Number 5, the argument of fine-tuning. That, of course, is Alexei Fokin's term for it. This argument is based on the relationship between the parts and the whole. If the world as a whole produces and contains rational beings as its parts, the world itself should also be rational, or contain a rational principle that generates and governs its parts. Thus, according to Tertullian, quote, it is the rational element which we must believe to be a natural quality of the human soul, oppressed upon it from its very first creation by its Creator, who is himself essentially rational. For how should that be other than rational, which God produced on his own prompting, nay more, which he expressly sent forth by his own breath? According to Lactantius, quote, everything that possesses reason must come to existence by means of reason, and this reason belongs to rational and wise nature, which could not be anything other than God. Since the world has reason by whom it is governed, and thanks to whom it exists, it was created by God. End quote. Since this argument is based on the presence of rational beings in the world, it can be viewed as an analog of the modern fine-tuning argument. Number 6, the argument from the necessity of a formal or ideal cause. This argument is based on the Platonic doctrine of a common idea of property, which belongs to many different things and which they share in common. One of the most famous arguments of this type is based on the idea of the good. Thus, according to St. Augustine, all things in the world are good in some way. Quote, this thing is good and that is good, but take away this and that, and regard good itself if you can, and you see God. Not good by a good that is other than himself, but the good, capital G, of all that is good. That is, quote, the good itself. In another treatise, Augustine points out that everything that exists is good because of its very existence. But every changeable thing is good not by itself, per se ipsum, but by participation in the unchangeable good, which is the good, again, capital G, not because of something else, but by itself, per se ipsum. And by participation in him, all other things exist. This unchangeable good we call the highest good, which is God. And that argument, so far as at least Fokin cites here, was only given by Augustine. Number 7, the argument from degrees of perfection. This argument presupposes that all things possess different degrees of perfection, so that from the less perfect things we can come to the more perfect, and so on until we'll come to the best and most perfect thing. Thus, plants which possess power of life are better or more perfect than stones, which simply exist. Animals are more perfect than plants because of sensation and movement. Humans are more perfect than animals because of reason. Inside a human being, the soul is more perfect than the body, and inside the soul, its rational part is more perfect than the sensible and affectional. But even human reason, however perfect it may be, is changeable. It can become wise or foolish and needs some higher principles to get true knowledge and understand things properly. But the laws of knowledge and understanding are immutable and universal. They transcend any particular consciousness and exist independently of any human individual. Therefore, these laws are eternal and belong to the perfect and unchangeable wisdom, which is God. And of course, that argument is given by Augustine, but there are also variants of it in Dionysius the Areopagite. Number 8, historical arguments. These arguments are based on the historical fact that there is a consensus of all regarding the existence of gods or a god. It has close connection to the belief in an innate idea of God mentioned above. Thus, according to St. Cyril of Alexandria, he points out that the notion of God is not as much a result of teaching as a common knowledge that is innate to human nature. Quote, a testimony of this is the common striving of all men for God, which is expressed both privately and publicly, both by person and by nation. For all of us humans have been taught to believe that there exists a Godhead, about whom to speak properly is not easy, and for those who know him, it is impossible to tell about him. Amen. End quote. According to Augustine, quote, the name of God by which he is called was not unknown in some way to the whole creation, and so to every nation before they believed in Christ. For such is the energy of true Godhead, that it cannot be altogether and utterly hidden from any rational creature, so long as it makes use of its reason. For with the exception of a few in whom nature has become outrageously depraved, the whole race of man acknowledges God as the maker of this world. In respect, therefore, of his being the maker of this world that is visible in heaven and earth around us, God was known unto all nations, even before they were indoctrinated into the faith of Christ. Number 9, moral arguments. There are also some arguments based on the moral qualities of human beings that lead to the existence of a perfect good. Thus, Augustine points out that before we become truly happy, there is a notion of happiness or beatitude impressed in our mind, according to which we, without any doubt, know and speak that we possess a kind of happiness or beatitude in ourselves. But the highest beatitude and the highest good is God. According to Boethius, everyone who strives to moral perfection and true happiness testifies that he is currently imperfect. But even if he is imperfect, he also possesses some degree of perfection. Furthermore, in temporal and earthly goods, there can be only a temporal and imperfect happiness. Therefore, there must be an eternal and perfect happiness or beatitude, which is God as the highest good, than which no greater can be conceived. And we'll recognize there Boethius as a source for answer. Thus, all people who intuitively strive for moral perfection and true happiness are striving for God, though not all of them are aware of them. To sum up this brief overview of basic arguments for the existence of God in patristic literature, shows us that the fathers of the Church, alongside ancient Greek and Roman philosophers, worked out many different types of such argument, including both a priori and a posteriori versions. Nonetheless, such rational proofs of the existence of God did not play a significant role in patristic theology as a whole, probably because of its strong inclination to apophaticism and a slight suspicion toward human reason and its ability to perceive God by purely